Hi, welcome. This is Chad Gotzi, along with Chad Hilton from VariMax. We're here for our second spring update of the winter wheat yield capacity and recommendations that we've run through VariMax. And these are some recommendations that we've ran up through April 9th. So we'll quick go through these and give you an update as we've seen some surprising things. So we just wanted to reach out and share them with everybody. The first field we'll look at, we'll kind of start from south in Oklahoma and move our way into Kansas and then Colorado, where we've got most of our majority of our wheat acres. This is a field in northwest Oklahoma, kind of on the major alfalfa county line. So all of these slides coming up are kind of laid out in the same way. We have our initial, most of these fields we've run 2 recommendations for. Which is what you get with basically our intensive algorithm approach, where you're dedicated to making more than one nitrogen application in the late winter, early spring timeframe. So here we have our March 6th tillering image. Left-hand image is the nitrogen recommendation, and this happens to be for UAN 28%. And then the middle image is for the yield potential or yield capacity, we like to call it, at that given time of tillering. The right-hand image shows the joining image right before they made their second nitrogen application in the spring. This was taken on March 26th in right around that between the first and second joint, I believe it was. Obviously interesting thing here, Chad, is the average yield capacity started off at 67 bushels per acre potential, and then moved to actually 97, which we've seen some very excellent wheat to date. Obviously, we're concerned with the frost potential and even the past frost that a lot of areas have had the last week or 10 days, but a lot of good looking wheat around to date. I guess, Chad, is there anything else you wanted to point out with this specific field?
Not necessarily. Like you had mentioned, this is the intense management option that was selected by this grower. And obviously you can see a big change as far as the end needs go from the tillering application to reassessing a joint. So definitely bumped up that capacity on this field, and things are looking pretty good for them right now. So we'll probably plan to reassess it maybe one more time just to see how things are going here in another week or so.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is, and really even with that first top dress application on March 6th, or around that March 6th time frame, really calling for 8 gallons, which relatively low amount. And then basically the late March image and NREC didn't call for much additional. So yeah, interesting, maintaining that high yield potential, even with really very little nitrogen applied. So obviously probably had a fair amount of residual there, capture some of that. But so that's our first example of what we've seen. This is another field. The big difference here, and I failed to mention that on the previous slide, that was corn, wheat following corn and not grazed. This is a field from the same general area that was grazed wheat. Obviously, our yield capacities reflect that a little bit lower yield capacities. March 6th tillering time frame, we're calling for 7.9 gallons per acre average UAN application rate. Average yield capacity at that time, 45 bushel. And if I recall right, Chad, this was right after, not too long after they removed the yearlings from this field, and we were had a fair amount of regrowth, but I know we were concerned about having enough regrowth to get an accurate yield capacity.
Yeah, I think they just removed them within a day or so. So it was actually, the grower sent me a picture of it. It was pretty grazed down, but we're able to capture an image from it. But this joint one, obviously things did develop more, over that month time frame, and things are looking pretty good for the, as grazed as down as it was. So we'll see what the impact is on that um, during harvest. But so far, things are looking pretty good.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I'd like to point out here with this second image, the March 26th image, is even though our average product rate was 5.9 gallons, so relatively low amount of nitrogen needed on average. There still are those fields, areas in that field that do need a higher amount. You look at, we got 12 or 15% of the field that needs between 12 and 15 gallons of N. And that's something, Chad, that you've focused on here lately, is just that return on that variable rate portion of this VariMax prescription or recommendation is it's worth only a lot in nitrogen savings, but really when you think about its impact on yield, it really does pay to variable rate, and capture that potential out there.
Yeah, it does. I had a message out this week that the last 2 years that we've kind of collected some information from growers that we were able to get it from. Guys had seen just off moving from a flat rate to a variable rate, and obviously every field is different. I mean, some fields don't have the variability there to pay for it 100%. But what we've seen the last 2 years is up to $4. Just return on investment by doing the variable rate application, some guys have seen. So definitely a benefit to doing it.
Yep. I mean, you take this second image here, for example. I mean, if you apply that 6 gallons, you're going to be under applying in some areas of the
Yeah.
field, and over applying in others. So yep. We'll move in a little further north, into north central Oklahoma, from Garfield County. Same setup here, March 6th, tillering image, basically calling for zero nitrogen. A little bit on the western part of the field, but not much anywhere else. And then this is wheat following corn as well. Then March 26th image, basically saying, hey, you've got excellent looking wheat here, average yield capacity of 102 bushels, and basically calling for no more nitrogen. So this is a field that obviously we want to get another image, flag leaf, just to make sure that the nitrogen, is still there. I still have a healthy crop, just to maintain that protein. This is in situations where that late image is important as far as maintaining that protein level. We don't want to. We've got a lot of capacity out there right now. We don't want to run short during grain fill. So obviously, this is a excellent looking field. Hopefully we can avoid any potential freeze damage.
Yeah, that'll be the key, Chad. I know that these were taken prior to that cold snap we had, and it sounds like we may have a couple more coming up. So we'll see the impact probably here in the next a week or so. What that is.
Hey. North central Oklahoma here again, K County. We can see our tillering image shows a little bit of the variability from the east to the west. Not calling for a tremendous amount of nitrogen. Yield capacity is 72 at that point. And then our joining image at the end of March, basically not calling for any additional nitrogen, but still have that high, excellent yield capacity as of March 26th. So
looks like taking advantage of a lot of residual N that's there, and with the rain and moisture that they've had, appears that they're able to capitalize on some of that. So.
Yep. Yeah, when you consider it, this field that has had 85 pounds of N applied to date. So it's surprising with that yield capacity. But yeah, obviously taking advantage of mineralization or residual N. So. Here's another field from K County. Very similar results. This is wheat following corn. a little less nitrogen applied to date. This field had a little bit of a later planting date um, than some of the earlier ones. But same thing, calling for 6.2 gallons in March 6th and March 26th. Higher yield capacity, but still not requiring much nitrogen. Really, just to summarize, what we've seen from the images in Oklahoma. Really, with the dual purpose wheat, we've seen anywhere yield capacities from 45 to 65 bushels per acre. Very little N required really to date. Most of those fields had about 100 pounds pounds of N per acre applied to date. Grain only, depending on planting dates. The extremely late planted wheat. We've had a few of those fields that were a little bit lower yield capacities in the 65 to 75 range, but really most of those have been in the 80 to 100 bushel range. In recommendations, really very little in recommended with these last round of images. Total in applied on a lot of these fields has been 60 to 100 pounds of in. So that's kind of where we stand, and obviously we've talked about the potential frost damage that hopefully everybody can avoid. Just because of that critical stage we're at. So, Chad, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think the only thing is, I had a couple growers send me pictures of the current crop, and a lot of it appears to be in flag leaf growth stage or getting close. Just kind of depends on that plant date. But I think overall, most guys can be pretty excited about the potential of that crop. We're, just kind of crossing our fingers, or they're crossing their fingers right now. Um, you know, on the frost damage part, to hopefully that was minimal impact going forward. But overall, looks pretty good for where we're at this year.
All right, Chad. I'll turn it over to you. You know these fields in Kansas a little bit better than I do, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yep. So this one would be central Kansas. Um, obviously the little later plant dates here, getting the wheat in. Um, Plant date of 10/29. So when we took this first original image on the 23rd, pretty small crop. We kind of knew it going in, but we just wanted to kind of see where things were at. So you can see calling for average of 14 and a half gallons of the 28% across that field with a yield capacity of 38. So low biomass wheat at that time. Just recently updated the image here this last week. You can kind of see, obviously, got some areas that are showing up that definitely need some in. So calling for a little bit more as we speak. So this grower will actually be going out again to apply some in here, probably within the next week or so. So still tillering. I'd say probably within the next week or so, that crop will be probably pushing that first joint. So be interesting to see how things go here on this field coming up here in another week or so. So
Definitely a lot of variability within that field, and probably no doubt, a lot of it due to planting date and conditions.
yep. And he's got I think he has some low spots in there too that he talked to me about. So there's some areas that may need some attention. But Chad, I
Okay.
think this one's your area, correct?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So this is a field that wheat after corn planted a really optimal planting date. We have 80 pounds of N applied to date. So the first recommendation we ran on March 7th basically was saying we had a decent average yield capacity for the area and really given the time. We had just started regrowth, stuff greening back up on March 7th that week. So we really probably ran the image a little bit earlier than we would have liked. Went ahead and made an in application. Came back actually just a couple days ago and reran a yield capacity estimate in NREC. Obviously, a lot higher yield potential or yield capacity of 84, and I think that has to do with just that earlier one was probably a little bit too early. But we've had really good conditions since then. We've actually had some moisture, and so things that definitely are looking up. So the interesting thing here, obviously, the variability in the field has changed. We got a good 20% of the field that doesn't need much. And then we've got the rest of the field actually is calling for 11 to 18 gallons of 32. So this is something we're still in late tillering, probably joint starting here in the next few days or week, if we stay somewhat warm, but definitely going to have to apply some more nitrogen. This is a typical example of what we see out here when we have high yield capacity areas out west. We typically under fertilize, in our protein is horrendous in those situations. So this is an example of making more than one application, top dress application, where we can try to maintain that, because it looks like out here, Chad, that we're actually going to, compared to other areas like in Oklahoma, it looks like we're going to be putting more nitrogen on to maintain those yield capacities than maybe we have in the past years. So
Yeah, something that, Chad, I want to make note so everybody's aware is, part of, so when you see some of these yield capacities and some fields are maybe at 80 or 90 and aren't calling for much in, something that we obviously in our system, we utilize agronomics that go into this. So, and one of those pieces that fits into how this system all works is that yield goal that they're shooting for. So, on some of those fields in Oklahoma, a lot of those are that trying to capture a 60, 65, 70 bushel wheat crop, are their goals that they're shooting for. So that's all taken into consideration when these prescriptions are processed, our system does. So I imagine out here, Chad, your goals may be maybe, a little higher as well. So just depends on where you're at, and the different fields have different, different yield targets as well. So that's something that each one of these prescriptions can be different.
Yep, exactly, and that's a good point, because this field, this producer, historically, we're shooting for 90 bushels
Yeah.
per acre is kind of our yield goal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, all plays a part.
yep.
Yeah, this one here, Chad, I'm working with a grower here in northwest Kansas. Just ran this here. This was be late tillering. They're probably hitting joint, or have hit joint, maybe this week. Last I spoke to them, but we're going to reprocess it again here this next week, just to kind of see where things are at. But wanted to kind of show you this one as well. And there's a story behind this field as well. You can kind of see on the capacity side, the south part of that field always seems to do better than the north part of that field. And the grower told me that before we even ran these prescriptions. So he was just really intrigued by what we were showing him, how it compared with kind of some of their historical yield maps and things like that. So managing things different and utilizing the variable rate, he's pretty excited about. So we'll see how this one goes here in another week as well. Yeah, these are both Northeast Kansas. Trying to get, let's see here. So yeah, we're still like I said, up north, pretty late plant dates, obviously 10/20 and 10/16 on both of these. Pretty still tillering, probably a couple weeks away to maybe joint here yet. You can see that this is two examples in our area on the left, averaging about 9 gallons needed. This grower actually only had about 20 to 30 pounds of in out up front, and then is actually coming in and going to make one last pass on his fields. Pretty low yielding ground. I think growers only shooting for, trying to get 50 bushel wheat, if I remember right. Um, so just interesting. You can see then the one on the left is an intense to manage field. Something I wanted to point out and kind of show a difference as well. And the one on the right is another field in our area. Grower is actually gonna make one pass this week, and so he has chosen the single RX, and so you can see it's calling for an average of 19 gallons, and you can see the variability anywhere from really 15 to 30 across that field. So just kind of comparing the differences there between management practices or operational practices that you choose within our system and how it works. So the rec on the left, this guy will be applying some now, and then he will also look at it at joint to two nodes to see if there's any more nitrogen that's needed. So just to kind of show this one as well.
Yep. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, everybody manages their nitrogen a little bit differently, and obviously we give that opportunity to guys that are just want to make that one pass application versus those that are willing to go over multiple times. So obviously important to verify that.
Chad, I noticed on that last screen there, though, both of those fields had a yield capacity of 61.
Yep.
I did not catch that till now. So interesting.
Yep. So to summarize, and I think across the board, the Kansas, Colorado stuff varies a lot more, which I guess is typical just because of our conditions last fall. And then two other places have been, we were fairly dry over the winter where, I know Kansas has been, eastern Kansas, central eastern has been a little bit wetter. But grain only fields of yield capacities have been in that 35 to 90 bushel. A lot of them in the 60 to 90s. In recommendations, 0 to 45 pounds total usually have been in that 40 to 75 range. The one thing that is surprising, I think when you step back and look at as far as calculating pounds of N per bushel of yield capacity right now, if you do that across the board from Oklahoma to northeast Colorado, north central Kansas, we're anywhere from 0.6, 0.7 to 1.6 or 1.8. Now obviously we don't know on a lot of these fields the residual N that's there, but it just goes to show you that putting the old standard top dress rate is not accurate, or is probably not accurate in any given year. And everybody's seen data that supports that and shows that. So when we think about managing this wheat crop, and we know it's not worth as much as we want it to be, but you really, in a year like this, my philosophy is always that you can't afford to leave bushels out there in the field and not capture them. And I think especially in our area in western Kansas and eastern Colorado, I think I'm seeing a lot of that again, that I think our yield capacities are way exceeding what nitrogen we have there. And I'm afraid that we're going to have low protein again. It's lining up like it has the last couple of years. So.
No, I agree. And just to summarize these last slide here, Chad, these fields here are in northeast Kansas. So you can see the difference of kind of where we're at growth stage wise and development wise. We did have some frost damage here. I think it is going to impact some of our yield potential possibly. But we were still tillering, so we're hoping that it's going to be minimal. But you can even see on the plant there on back the tailgate, some of the tip back we're seeing, and from that frost, we stayed down about 24 for quite a few hours. So we'll see what happens here the next. Some fields took a little harder than others, so we'll see how things transpire here the next week or so. But I agree. I tell guys to really see this work. You got to put it on your acre. The guys that have tried it and have stepped into this year have been pretty intrigued by how it's helping them make those decisions that aren't the same every year, and understand kind of what they have out there. we believe it's a step in the right direction to being a little bit more efficient with those inputs. So
Yep, definitely. And too, something to keep in mind too with the leaf burn that we have had with the frost. Sometimes when we have enough of that, it does affect our yield capacity estimate. So that's something to keep in mind. Obviously, let it recover a little bit, and should be able to get an accurate estimate, especially when we're still in the tillering stage, and that frost damage isn't going to hurt a whole lot. Just cosmetic, but
yeah,
something to keep in mind, and we do take that into account when we always like to give it a little bit of time to recover. So I think with that, Chad, I think we'll go ahead and conclude the recording. We will follow up in a couple weeks with our third video as far as recapping what we've seen, and hopefully we still have high yield capacity, and at that point we've dodged the freezes. So let's hope for the best. So thank you for joining in today.
yep. Thanks a lot.